Class. This is going to be the final lecture for Module 1 here. I believe we lift off here at slide 33. And so we have a pretty simple question here, which the following consider network server software is pre-installed on Windows Server 2022 will cheat. The answer is file and print sharing. And the reason is, client for Microsoft Networks, that should tell you right there, right? Client, that it's not a server software. TCP/IP, no. All machines use that to connect on the, it's part of the network stack. All machines use this, and so it's not necessarily a server software. Network interface device driver, that's your driver. That's what sits between your computer and sits between your actual hardware. And so that's on any device that connects to and talks on a network. And so the answer is file and print sharing for Microsoft Network. So that's network server software because you're serving up these resources to clients. Okay. All right, home stretch, Windows Server hybrid infrastructure. And so hybrid means this sort of blend of on-premise resources as well as cloud resources. In this case, it's Windows Server hybrid infrastructure. And so we're talking about Windows Server running on premises and also Windows Server running in the cloud on Microsoft Azure. Yes, on their premises, not on yours. And we call this cloud sort of because it's ubiquitous, it's sort of abstract. It's out there. We don't care, right? It's somewhere out there, and that's why we call it the cloud. Cloud computing because we don't really see it. It's kind of up in the sky in a cloud somewhere, but we believe it's there because we can use it. All right, some attributes of cloud computing in the context of a hybrid infrastructure include the following: scalability. That's a huge plus. These resources tend to be elastic, and what we can do, we can scale them both vertically, meaning more get a heftier machine for use. So if you're familiar with AWS, maybe like going from a small to a medium to a large to a XL, and you have different hardware configurations on these different VM types. So we can get a beefier machine and also we can scale horizontally, which means, adding more machines, sort of, multiple parallel computing. Agile, we can do this on the fly, right? We can do all this stuff on the fly. We can change these very, very easily. Whereas if they were actual tangible physical machines on premises, we'd have to get our, dedicated server and network team to install these and add more. It would end up being very costly for us. Instead, we can rent compute power. And we can do it quickly, right? We can do it quickly. So agile kind of, that's what I really mean quickly. There is also the economic component, all this not listed here, that we can rent these machines. And so compute power, over the long term, sure, it's a little bit more of a sink, but we don't have all of these capital expenditures up front, or it may or may not be a sink depending on how much we use, right? We may not need to, um, you know, throw a whole bunch of servers at something. It may end up even in the long term being cheaper for us to rent the compute power instead of actually setting these machines up on our network. And current, yeah, so the patches, all of the security, all the maintenance, et cetera, is done remotely on these cloud providers, and they generally stay current with these things. So we don't have to worry. It's not as under our control, right? We can maybe sort of request from their side a log of what they're doing to stay current, but we don't have these concerns. They're taken out of our hands. We don't need to worry about patch management, et cetera, although zero day can get anyone. So yes. All right, so three main categories. You'll hear these referred to as SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So SaaS, software as a service, that's where we basically have machines that we don't know anything about. We don't provision nothing on the provider side, and we just use it. Generally, you can think of this as using software over a browser, right? Like, just for example, if you use, I don't know, let's say an email client, something like that, that runs in your browser, right? So that can be thought of as software as a service. And platform as a service is sort of, it's not exactly IaaS, but passes where you develop the applications using their tools and infrastructures. And so, you're not just using one application with their compute power. You develop the application, then host it on their side with their tools and using their infrastructure. And lastly, we have infrastructure as a service, and that's where you sort of offload a whole lot to your provider. So you use your providers, their computing power over there, their resources, storage, and so it's sort of offloading everything, or a lot more, anyways, to your cloud provider versus SaaS or PaaS. And yes, infrastructure is going to be kind of the model that we're using here because we provision our own VMs and everything on that side, as we'll see in just a moment. Okay, so you'll need to create an Azure account. So you go to portal.azure.com. Oh, hey, there we go. All right. Thought Murphy had struck. All right, now I've already created my account. It'll pop up. It'll populate here in a second. Actually, it hasn't. There we go. You will need to create your account. I've already created mine, so your process will be a little bit longer, take a little bit longer. Any questions, contact me, or better yet, even ask in the Discord and put me on pause. Come back to me when you're done creating your account, and we'll do this together. I think I remember my password here. Uh, Let's see. If not, I'll use Mother. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good, good. All right. So we have multi-factor authentication set up, and it's gonna send me a text to make sure I'm really me. Let's see. There it is. I should have checked the 30-day box, but I guess slip of mind there. Happens more as I get older. And any moment we will be presented with the portal. Yeah, here we are. And so here's our Quick Start Center. I believe the next slide references the Quick Start Center. So we'll click on it. All right. And if we go under create and popular services, that should get us to where our slides start. All right, quick start. Yeah, you can create a web app. So create a web app to run on IIS, Internet Information Services on their machines. Deploy and run a container-based app, so via Docker, Kubernetes. Containerization. I can deploy new VMs. Now that's interesting to us, right? Watch this. I can either deploy a Windows or Linux VM. All right, I can do analytics. Yeah, I can do storage. I mean, wow, there's a lot of stuff here. I can set up a DB. So this is pretty cool stuff. We won't do it just yet. We'll do it next lecture, but mm, there we go. All right, and if you're working with Azure VMs and various Azure services such as Azure AD, right, Active Directory, but it runs on the Azure side. Azure DNS, domain name system, domain resolution, but on the Azure side, and Azure File Services, so file storage sharing. Here's our Quick Start Center. So, as we saw, oh, you know what? It's creating the VM, isn't it? Um, Anyways, you get the idea. We can populate a whole bunch of info about the VM, but I'm not going to do that right now. Sorry, let me come back here. I forgot where I was. Let's see, getting started Azure Quick. Yeah. So this is my Quick Start Center. Go to Quick Start Center, and if you go to Create and then Popular Services, this is what gives you the options that you see here on slide 38. Getting started with Microsoft Azure. Quick start, clicking start and deploy a virtual machine. Yeah, 1.9. Yeah, so if we look at activity 1.9, that's where we create the Azure VM, and I think we'll do that. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to do that with you. I think I will leave that perhaps as an exercise to you. It's not a difficult activity. By default, VMs configured with RDP. Yeah, so let's talk for a sec about RDP. Remote Desktop Protocol. If you don't know, that's a sysadmin's best friend, or one of their best friends, anyways. Um, all right. RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. I have mine pointed to my it redirects to my virtual machine, which is running on my local host, and I didn't remap the port. The default port is 3389 for remote desktop protocol. If you become a sysadmin or network person, you will know this by heart, or even anybody that works on these boxes via RDP, you will know this by heart. I promise you. I'll never forget it. I'll be in a rest home or a convalescent home or something, and I'll remember this even up to my deathbed. And what have I got here? I have got my desktop. Oops, darn. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Here, let me unlock on the other side. Sorry. Okay. Interesting. Got a little freeze. So while it's doing its thing, it's available through a public IP address. Yes. In when we create our VMs, as you'll see, we have remote desktop protocol available to us, and we will get our public IP address with along with the port. Um, and so we can actually we can log into the machine as if we were at the machine looking at the desktop. You can turn it off, it's probably best for security, but for our purposes you definitely want to leave it on, and it will even allow you to download the RDP file, which you can just use to double click and then connect to the machine. So that's very handy. Yeah, it's always in practice best to disable RDP afterwards. Oh man, what is going on here? All right, I'll tell you what, let's do this. I will restart this machine. It seems to have hung. Okay, and I'll move on. Yep, click the VM name you assigned. Yeah, so you can access these from the portal, right? From the portal front end, you can access your new VM by clicking the VM name you assigned during creation process, right? You click connect and then RDP. So you actually don't have to use the remote desktop app to connect to. You can do so via the portal, and then you're working in your browser as if it were an RDP session, a legit RDP session using the RDP app. Okay, so my machine has started here. So let's do control delete. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Yeah, I shut it down. There we go. So now I'm working on my server on our VM that we created. See, this is my auto generated. And yeah, like I said, it'll allow you to download an RDP file too. And excuse me. And so if you double click it, it'll just start an RDP session on that VM. Then you can see your desktop and you could do anything, yeah, you could do anything that you would be able to do in person. We know the answer, right? We just talked about it. I hope you know this. I hope you know this by default. Yeah, RDP. Okay, self-assessment. Self-assessment's up to you. Um, but really, we talked about the difference between a client and a server. I hope you know this. And we just talked about this, so I hope you know this. Either actually, the answers are in the slides, and so we don't need to discuss. Yep. Explain a role a server operating system has in the network. It serves up resources, right? We have clients that go to servers to serve up resources, be it files, applications, you name it. Core technology Windows servers, if you go back, they're enumerated and we discussed them in detail. And Windows Server to hybrid infrastructure, right? We discussed that it's sort of a blend of on-premises servers and servers via Azure. and the Azure cloud environment, as it were. And so that sort of concludes this lecture. You may see one more from me. I'm thinking about it. You may see one more for me where we actually walk through creation of a VM, because if I look, I'm about halfway through, and yeah, I don't want to risk having the video cut off in the middle. So, all right, I will see you at the next lecture and enjoy.